This week, we are talking about a long-running brouhaha over federal funding that a certain town named Foxborough says it's been waiting on for over a year. And without that money, the representatives of the town's meeting are withholding a needed license for Massachusetts' part of the world's biggest single event sporting event, the FIFA World Cup. Adam, good morning.
Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you. So, we're really interested to get your perspective on this. It involves a small group of essentially volunteers in this particular form of Massachusetts government. We might, I've been kind of thinking of it, it's a bit of a like sort of David and Goliath story, perhaps. We'll
I don't think you're
start.
the only one. Yeah, if you put it
Okay.
that way.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll start by listening some tape, the most recent town meeting taking place less than 100 days from the first matches scheduled to go off at Gillette Stadium. The town wanted all of this settled by March 17th. A local group representing FIFA told them at this meeting they would get security equipment the town needs by June 1st, and the police chief was nothing but frustrated by that.
We are 99 or 100 days away from hosting the largest sporting event in the world, and we're deciding or can't seem to find necessary funding for necessary equipment that's been identified in over a year and a half of planning. To the board, I do have to say, waiting till June 1st is unacceptable.
So, Adam, fill in some of the backstory for us on that too. Yeah.
Well, Foxborough is looking for $7.8 million to cover security costs connected to these games that are going to be played starting in just about 3 months. There will be 7 games played at what is being rechristened Boston Stadium. Even though it's Gillette Stadium, these are being presented as Boston's World Cup games. So the stadium is going to go by a different moniker for at least a month or two in during the tournament. $6.3 million of the money that Foxborough is looking for is to cover extra staffing, police, fire. $1.5 million of what Foxborough wants is to cover the cost of new equipment that they say they need to execute their safety plan. Now, this money was supposed to be coming from the Department of Homeland Security via FEMA. As you know, DHS has been shut down. The money has not yet been dispersed. So the question becomes, how is Foxborough going to make sure that they don't end up having to spend $7.8 million, which I think is about 10% of their town budget for the year? How can they make sure that that money is provided to them in advance rather than being left on the hook for it?
Yeah, and again, I wanted to come back to give us a little more background. I mean, many people are familiar with town meeting, but there's other people who spend
Well,
most
this
of
is
their
the
life.
select board as
I'm sorry,
opposed to town
select
meeting.
board. My
That's okay.
my
Easy
bad, my
mistake to
bad.
make.
Darn it. But eh, but yeah, town meeting is even more very
Even
much a
more
Massachusetts
small d
and more
democratic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and very yeah, and particular. But this is a particular form of government we have here, especially if you live most of your life in a city. You might not really understand who these people are and how they're just kind of average folks trying to help out, and they're having to deal with this giant issue, right?
Yeah, there are 5 people who are essentially working as volunteers. I believe they get a very, very small stipend for their service, but they're basically volunteers. I think that on the Foxborough Select Board, there's an insurance salesman, someone who works at a restaurant, the head of the town's rec department. As you said, people from sort of ordinary walks of life. I believe the chairman of the Select Board, Bill Yukna, who we're going to hear from in just a little bit. I think he works in investment. But yeah, these are just ordinary people who basically give up a lot of their free time with essentially no compensation to serve the town.
And here they are having to quarrel over, as we keep as I said, and as we heard the police chief say, the world's most giant sporting event, at least if you say
Yeah,
single event, and having to go and talk about millions of dollars. This is not like, the police chief shows up and goes, we need a new cruiser, and they talk about that. This is like on a whole nother order.
well, it's a whole other order, but when you contrast the amount of money that Foxborough is looking to secure with the amount of money that's going to be generated by the World Cup, It actually is. I don't want to say a pittance. $7.8 million is a chunk of money, but the World Cup is projected to generate, forgive me, I think it's $11 billion in revenue. So you contrast that to the money that Foxborough is looking for, and it's actually quite small.
And I guess we should say, I mean, Foxborough is not like just any other little town with a select board. I mean, obviously, Gillette Stadium sits in their town, and a certain person of the name of Kraft, they're well acquainted with, and that plays into that too. You'll explain that to us.
Well, it does play into that, but when they license events at Gillette Stadium working with Craft Sports and Entertainment, they're working directly with the Crafts. The Crafts in this case are renting out the stadium to Boston 2026 or Boston Soccer 2026 and FIFA, the body that oversees the World Cup. So it's a new configuration that the people in Foxborough are not used to. They're used to dealing with the Crafts. They're not used to dealing with FIFA or with a local group representing FIFA. So I think that adds to some of the mistrust that we see here. Also, the local group representing FIFA has revealed that they've only got a couple $1 million in their checking account. So they have promised Foxborough, hey, we're going to help you cover these costs associated with staffing, associated with equipment. But I think in Foxborough, among the select board members, there's some concern because they don't necessarily have the money. Now, the local group representing FIFA has also said that they're going to be backstopped by Craft Sports and Entertainment. In other words, that Craft Sports and Entertainment will front them the money if necessary. But it all just seems a little contingent from the point of view of the Foxborough Select Board. And that's why I think when they reconvene on March 17th, they don't meet again until then. There's a very real chance that they may deny this license.
Which would be unbelievable.
It would be unbelievable. It'd be remarkable. And then we'd have to see what transpired if that did occur. I think that there's a good chance that, as we've talked about with many things over the course of our conversations on Friday mornings, there's a good chance this would end up in litigation because the local group, Boston Soccer 2026, argued at the last select board meeting. It was interesting. They were trying to be very deferential to the select board because they need what the select board has to offer in terms of that entertainment license. But they also asserted that the select board does not have the legal authority to deny a license based on financial concerns. At which point the select board patched in the town attorney who said, "Oh, yes, we do. Let's not push this too far." But I think if they denied the license, there's a good chance that you'd see the local group representing FIFA trying to go to court to get some sort of emergency injunction that would allow the games to proceed.
So, Adam, you talked yesterday with the head of the Foxborough Select Board, Bill Yukno. What did he have to say?
Basically, he said that Foxborough does not want to keep these games from happening, that they'd like the games to happen, but that the town just has not gotten the assurances that it needs to allow them to proceed. Let's take a listen.
We're just doing our job, not because we want to stop the FIFA thing. That's actually the opposite. We'd love to have this done. This should have been done 2 months ago, but unfortunately, the Boston 2026 and the Kraft organization, have failed to meet the needs that are just general needs that have been outlined by both FIFA, federal, state, and our local law enforcement.
Which to me does not sound like he's a man on the verge of changing his tune.
So he starts out there by saying he wants the games to go on, but you think they're just really going to hold the line, huh?
Yeah, that's how it sounds to me. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. The select board in this week's meeting made it clear that they don't think they're getting the assurances they need. And I didn't hear anything in Bill Yukna's comments that suggested that he is softening his stance in any way.
Well, we're just going to have to keep track of this. It really, as we said before, it'd be unbelievable if such a sporting event were held up in any way by anyone for any reason.
It'd be remarkable, but it does seem like it's a legit possibility right now.